Welcome to Small Arms Solutions. Today we're looking at my PCC. This is my Colt Pattern 9mm SBR. Now, I've had a lot of experience with the Colt Patterns over the years and with the Colt rifles. When I decided I wanted to get a SBR 9mm PCC, liking the Colt Pattern, however, I look at the Colt rifle and I don't see a rifle that's fully developed. With a lower receiver as far as utilizing the standard M16 magazine well, using an adapter, some of the trigger issues, of course, the rails, and so forth. There were some better ways to do things, especially with all the accessorizing it as well. So what I did was I took a look at what was out there, and I wanted to see who had done pretty much what I would have done to make this a true 9mm carbine. And the whole thing starts with the lower receiver. This lower receiver is manufactured by Quarter Circle 10. As you can see, Quarter Circle 10, they didn't use a modified magazine well. They made an actual 9mm magazine well to take the Colt Pattern magazines or Uzi pattern type magazines. This is what Colt should have done, making the gun a dedicated 9mm. That was one of the first things that I really looked at. This was done by Quarter Circle 10. Now, for those of you guys who don't like using this particular magazine, you do have Quarter Circle 10 lower receivers that will take Glock magazines. I do believe they might take Beretta, SIG P320, and even HK MP5 magazines. So you have that option. I particularly went with this magazine over the Glock for a very simple reason. Anybody who is trying to manufacture a bolt hold open on a Glock pattern magazine fails. Very rarely do they ever work. I've tested several guns over the years with numerous Glock magazines, and even though they're all factory OEM Glock magazines, some will lock open and some won't. I just got done with a B&T APC 9, and not one out of 6 magazines locked it open. So I wanted to have a magazine that I knew for sure that was going to lock open every time, and the Colt Pattern Uzi magazines do. The only negative aspect to this magazine is it's difficult to load by hand when you're pushing down straight. You literally have to have an up lula to be able to load this magazine. That's the only negative aspect to this magazine. Of course, when they do drop, you can tend to lose bullets as well. But 32 rounds with a straight magazine loaded with an up lula, you have a very, very reliable system. And that's why I preferred the Colt Pattern magazine, because I never have issues with them locking back. For as far as magazines, there are 2 main magazines that I will use. The first magazine that you see here is Colt's Metal Form. Now, the Metal Form magazine, manufactured by a company called Metal Form, they've been the OEM manufacturer for Colt, well, God, since probably the 9mm, it started up. Metal Form makes an excellent magazine. It's a steel magazine. It's a really good magazine. The next one was C Products Defense. You have both 32 and 20. They also make a 5, I believe a 10 round as well. These are the best magazines that I have found. I've found some other ones that I'm not too particularly fond of. I haven't had a lot of good luck with some of the other ones, so I generally stick with what works. But these are certainly the best 2 magazines that I've had used thus far. So now we're starting going over from back to front. I'm going to describe to you every part on here and why I chose it. Now, all the parts that you have on here, you can buy somewheres, with the exception of this upper receiver, which I'll get to. With the exception of the upper receiver. So these are all parts that you could take and you could add to your, even add to your Colt, if you so chose. First thing was the stock. This is a standard Magpul CTR stock, very, very lightweight. Standard mil-spec type receiver extension. And we'll start with the lower receiver. When you start looking at buffers, you have basically 2 Colt weights. One of them is 2-piece, one of them is 1-piece. The semi-auto only is 5.4 ounces. It is 1 piece. Now, that is not used on full auto because it's solid. That will cause you to have bolt carrier bounce. It won't work properly on fully automatic. The next one is the 2-piece, which we're going to see photographs of all these. And that is also a 5.6 ounce, but it's 2 pieces and it has some give in there, so it will absorb the shock and you won't have the bolt carrier bounce. Now, that works well for the most part. However, sometimes when these things are really overgassed, you tend to go with something a little bit bigger. This is an H4. This is an H4 buffer that was used, that's made by Primary Weapon Systems. And you'll also see we have the Colt Plug in the back here. This is something that we've talked about in other videos of mine, which this is one of the problems with the bolt coming back too far and dumping the cartridge case into the trigger compartment. I initially put in a design which made the front here longer And that took care of the problem as well. The engineers, the Colt, wasn't their idea, so they took my idea and split it in two. They put a plug on here which adds that extra ½ inch. So first off, the bolt will not come back far enough to open the trigger compartment. Two, you also take up the space, the ½ inch space where the bolt has to accelerate before it hits the bolt catch when it engages. Normally on the rifle you have the 1 inch extra, which is where the bolt is in front of the carrier. That stops right ahead of where the bolt catch is. That stops the advancement of momentum, so you don't take any wear on the bolt catch or the receiver. This does the same thing to the 9mm. But because I use this mostly suppressed, I went with the H4 buffer. Now, if I was going to just use this for unsuppressed, I would go with the standard full auto, the standard full auto buffer, which is in it. But since I'm doing mostly suppressed, I went with a heavier buffer. I highly also recommend that anybody who does anything with these guns, get yourself a proper buffer or get the extension in the back. That'll make all the difference in the world. Next thing we have is the safety. We have an ambidextrous. This is a Battle Arms development system, badass, or ambidextrous safety system. Now, we had also spoke in a previous video, but this hammer. This is a hammer that I had developed along with Monty over at Centurion Arms to take care of some major issues that goes on inside the lower receiver due to the use of the 9mm submachine gun. Due to the fact that you have a much higher rate of fire, the bolt's going back at a much higher velocity. And what was happening was, with the standard hammers, it was coming back and it was striking the back of the disconnector. So it would come back and it would strike, and it would cause peening. It also would give you trigger slap because that's smacking into the disconnector, which is attached to the trigger. And also the fact that it was doing that was causing wear on the hammer pin as well. Colt had to go with a stainless steel hammer pin to make it stronger than the standard pin because of this violent action. Now with fully automatic, there's nothing that you can do about it, but there is something you can do about it if you have a semi-automatic only. So what I did to stop this, we removed, as you can see, the entire hook from the back. So that way when the hammer comes back, there's nothing to smash into the disconnector. So what is this going to do? Now, with this hammer in there, since we don't have this striking the disconnector, we have no wear in the disconnector. Since we don't have this striking the disconnector, we don't have any wear on the hammer. Since we don't have this striking the back here, we don't get the extra vibrations and the conditions that cause the hammer and trigger pins to wear prematurely. So this is an excellent upgrade that they're available for $34 on Centurion's website that we did. I did with Bonnie. So this was another major enhancement that we did on this one as well. We do have an Oregon ambidextrous magazine release on here. I do like being able to grab like this and load rather than just on the right-hand side. On the right-hand side, we have a billet Steekins magazine release button. Now, one of the things you'll notice about the way the lower receiver is, you do have some movement in the ejector. This also is a benefit. You also have on here ramps on the feed ramps, which you don't have on the Colt, to guide the rounds in like you don't have on the Colt. So that's the enhancements to the lower receiver. Of course, we have my Magpul Mo grip. This is my favorite grip that I absolutely put on everything. I do have stainless steel hammer and trigger pins in here. That's just something that I had laying around from my Colt days, so I put those in there. Looking at the upper receiver, we have Voltor backup sights on here, front and rear. We have the standard quarter circle 10 bolt carrier. Now this is standard. This is a bolt. This isn't a carrier because there's the carrier is actually the bolt. This also has a pivoting 15 type extractor in it. The charging handle I chose is the BCM Gunfighter ambidextrous. Start taking a look at the upper receiver. Now, this receiver I had made specially many years ago from Voltor. This particular one comes with different attachments. You can have a forward assist, no forward assist. This is one that they had made for the 9mm submachine guns at that time, which they basically just put a cover on there. I don't believe they make this any longer. But we also have the gas block on here. Now, many of you seem to think this is a cartridge case deflector. Yes, cartridge cases do hit here, but that is not the purpose of this. This is a gas deflector because of the fact that you have a lot of unburnt propellant with the 9mm. This prevents it from hitting you in the face, especially if you're left-handed shooters. So this, again, gas deflector, not cartridge case deflector. Of course, you have your 9mm ejection port dust cover. Now we have the C4 rail. This is the standard C4 7-inch rail, 1913 rails. Again, I have a preference for 1913 rails. I have had no intention of changing this over to M-LOK. And now we're going to get into the barrel. The barrel that I chose on here was a Faxon Firearms. This is a 10.5-inch barrel. 10.5-inch barrel, although this is an SBR and I could go shorter, 10.5 is in my opinion, is the ideal barrel length to get the optimal use out of the 9mm cartridge, because you have to have time for your powder to burn so you can get the maximum velocity out of it. I think you get around 5 inches, you're getting a little bit too short. 8 inches is better, but once you get around to 10.5 inch, you're pretty much burning up most all of your propellant. Faxon barrels are absolutely incredible. This has got well over 10,000 plus rounds through it over the last, I'd say 6-7 years. We've done a lot with it, and Faxon just makes beautiful barrels. Now what I do have on here, because I don't have my suppressor on here, this is a Smith Enterprises Vortex flash suppressor. Undoubtedly, in my opinion, the finest flash suppressors that are on the face of the earth. If you're looking for flash suppression, I don't think there's any better option that's out there. So that's basically a look at what I have here and why I chose what I did for each component. So what I think we're going to do now is we're going to go to the range and we're going to see how this shoots, both suppressed and unsuppressed. Reliability is excellent with this gun. When it comes to ammunition, though, it depends on what you're doing with it. Now, the way this is set up for suppressed, so I have everything heavy in there. If I try to fire a 9mm cartridge unsuppressed, it's a little on the lower powered side. We can see some short stroking, and occasionally we can see some failures to eject. If I choose to shoot this thing specifically without the suppressor, I will lighten up the buffer and put the standard buffer in there, and that'll take care of it. So you really do tune these. And I will say, for as far as recoil is concerned, it's a blowback. So you definitely do get more recoil than you do out of a regular gas-operated shotgun. Cyclic Rate. You're looking at cyclic rate of over 1,200 rounds a minute. That's actually how fast this bolt is working. That's what causes the issues with the trigger mechanism. Is you're looking at 750 to 850 rounds a minute on an M16 or an M4 versus damn near 1,200 on this. So your operating dynamics are much different on the 9mm. Accuracy is wonderful. You have a good AR trigger on here, which is really conducive to getting good accuracy for as far as ammunition is concerned for feeding for hollow points. I've tried some of the SIG V-Crown, and I've had nothing but good luck with those. You have to really look at a bullet that's got a good ogive on it, one that's not going to be stumpy. That's going to be your biggest issue. But these things were designed for hardball. These were not designed for hollow points. Short of guns like the SIG MPX, some of the newer guns, they're designed more for law enforcement applications. This was originally developed for military applications. So that means it was going with a 9mm ball. Now, the Colt Pattern guns are excellent. I don't know if they're still made now or not because Colt stopped making a lot of different things. Those are excellent guns. There's certainly nothing wrong with them. This is just several steps ahead. This is several modifications that have been made more so looking at the gun as a final design versus one that was sort of left stagnant. Colt's failure with the 9mm submachine gun was because of lack of marketing. They never wanted to make anything other than M4 carbines. So that's what they pushed. That's what they pushed in sales. Unless we were asked specifically for 9mm, like we were by India and by Jamaica, didn't even bother showing them. It was always just a capability. But we had to do some fixing on these things once we got back from Jamaica and India, because these guns were going in the hands of special forces and drug people and drug enforcement. So we wanted to make sure that they did work, and we didn't have those same problems. In which both those contracts we did get, even with the problems that we had, we did get them back to Colt. The engineers did get some fixes to it. However, those of you who are buying these 9mm SMGs or 9mm carbines, you're going to find M16 hammers in them. That is the reason why you're seeing M16 hammers in the newer production 2009 forward semi-automatics, is because of that modification that was made to that bolt that altered the dimensions. And those altered the dimensions when you put them together with a stack of tolerances. There wasn't enough material to push the hammer all the way back with the new bolt. With the standard semi-automatic only disconnector. That's why they had to go with the full auto. The one that we designed, the one that I've had Monty make, that takes care of all those issues. There's plenty of meat on there for it to push it down to where it needs to go. You will not have any problems with those. You won't have the trigger slap. You won't have those other wear issues. Hope you all enjoyed this video. If you do, please click like, subscribe, and even better, share. Thank you.